So today's article we're going to go over comes from The Guardian, but this is something that I've seen a lot of when I've done my morning walks. Again, join us on the Saturday mornings, always fun. Or, watch the post stream afterwards, whatever you like. Um, we've had people from this say this before. Why is our country being affected so badly? And when you think about it, when you really sit down and think about it, this is a government that is infected with Brexit ideology, that hates and despises experts, that hates to take the advice because they think they become seen as weak. And yet, as we've seen recently, from the Tory backbench rebellion over these things, you've had a Tory MP compare Boris to King Theoden when he was in thrall to his advisor. There's this idea that somehow just Boris is just being enthralled by advisors, and he's just he's a king with bad advisors. That's what he's being portrayed as, not as what's really happening. That he's just an absolute incompetent who can't deal with details. Which, as Prime Minister, you need to deal with the details. But we'll get into the article. The serial incompetence of Boris Johnson's government is not an accident. It may look hapless, but this is to mistake the symptom for the cause. Instead, this government's ineptitude is a function both of the character of the man at the top and the defining creed of this administration. Reminders of our rulers' clumsiness arrive with such regularity that it's easy to become enamoured to it. This week we had the Prime Minister's misspeech in which he botched an attempt to explain the new regulations imposed on by the government that he leads. Perhaps it's an easy mistake to make, considering the ever-shifting nature of the advice. Best captured by that short video of Matt Lucas channeling the MP as he tells Britons, go to work, don't go to work, go outside, but don't go outside. But hardly any excuses of the repeating pattern of errors that has blighted this government's response to the coronavirus from the start. You'll recall that the contact tracing app that Matt Hancock hailed as a crucial weapon in the fight against the pandemic, it was scrapped in June after trials found that it didn't work, and it just relaunched last week, only to be exposed as carrying a pretty major bug. It also turned out that users of the NHS COVID-19 app who had been tested in NHS hospitals couldn't enter their results. An app with NHS branding all over it would only accept results done outside the NHS by private outsourced companies. That problem has now been partially fixed now, but it was par for what has been a very bumpy course. For those critical 7 days that were wasted before a clearly inevitable national lockdown was imposed in March, a delay that Professor Nigel Ferguson, then on the SAGE committee, estimates to have cost at least 20,000 lives to the multi-million pound contracts handed out to PALS supply PPE that turned out to be useless against COVID. Johnson and his team have blundered at every turn. The result is that the UK has managed to score a rare double notching of the highest death toll in Europe, along with the severest economic slump in the world. But this is not just bad luck. An unfortunate coincidence that saw a global health crisis collide with a set of ministers sadly unsuited to the task. Governments don't just happen to be incapable or capable, for that matter. On the contrary, if you want competence, competence has to be prized. Take the last Labour government, particularly in its first term, determined to rid the party of its historic association with economic failure, culminating in the IMF bailout and the winter of discontent. Tony Blair and Gordon Brown prized efficiency, sometimes to a fault, promoting the quiet and technocrat over the loud and inspiring. Brown apart is the longest serving cabinet minister, as was Alistair Darling, never happier than when making no news. The mantra of the age was what works. Johnson's administration places no such premium on good governance. Why might that be, we have to ask. First, look at the top. All institutions ultimately reflect the personality and priorities of the person in charge, governments especially. Even the Prime Minister's advisers don't pretend that he's a details man. Across policy and process, one colleague says of Johnson's earlier spell as the capital's mayor, he was basically chaotic, shagging his way around London, writing articles, leaving the actual work to his staff. Recall last year's revelation of a scribbled note referring to his predecessor as a girly swat Cameron. Put aside the reflective sexism and absorb the work ethic of a laxit. It regards Notting Hill's king of chillax and a relentless staggerite. I think that's how you say it. Still, Johnson's character simply measures less than the animating project of his government, Brexit. One only has to survey the cabinet to see that he rates fidelity to Brexit as a greater virtue than even rudimentary aptitude. That's why his government has room for Gavin Williamson and Dominic Raab, but cast out the likes of David Gauke and Dominic Grieve. That's why its choice to head Parliament's Intelligence and Security Committee was Chris Grayling. There can be surely no other explanation for that. But Brexit plays a deeper role here, more than a mere loyalty test. For Dominic Cummings in particular has always conceived his mission is less about breaking from the European Union than remaking the British state. Out would go the elitist experts, who, as Cummings' first patron, Michael Gove, memorably remarked, as the country had had enough of experts and would come into the warm antagonistic glow of the tech wizards, armed with supercomputers and reams of data. For this is the defining ethos of the Cummings-Johnson Brexit administration, to purge expertise and tear down what works. The proof is the 6 Whitehall permanent secretaries, driven out this year, or the never-ending efforts to try and hobble the BBC. Instead of cherishing expertised public servants the nation needs to get us through this crisis, it regards them as the enemy within, or those who will be faced with the hard rain. At the very heart of the project, says one Conservative former minister, is the insurgent anti-government, anti-establishment zeal. But guess what? You can't govern if you don't believe in government. This result is not incompetence, but a curious contradiction. Cummings poses as the great libertarian dissenter, but because he trusts no one but himself and has handpicked his own circle, he centralises an even more power to himself, as one insider calls his spade boys of number 10. No wonder Britain has failed to get a functioning test and trace system in place, while the data and decision making is jealously hoarded at the centre, rather than allowed to sit with those on the spot. So the government will keep messing up, and of course it will. COVID has ripped the mask off a man who leads it and has exposed its driving purpose. It has revealed both for what they are. And can't really disagree with that. 100% spot on. We're being driven by ideologues. But that was pretty much obvious from the start, really. So, as always, please do like and share the video. It does help out the channel a lot. And of course, we do talk about British politics a lot. So if you are new to the channel and you want to have more videos from that, then, hit that subscribe button. As always, links down below to my Patreon page and one-off donation link. And as always, we'll see you next time.